Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Here to talk all things hockey are your hosts, Brad Crisco, Ryan Hanna, and Evan Lobsinger.
In undergrad, I lived with one of my best friends, and I used to do this thing where in the mornings I would see what he was wearing when we were about to leave for class. We were in the same program.
That's cute.
And I would go back into my room and change into something as similar as possible just to drive him insane. And we would obviously sit next to each other in lectures. And because I thought it was funny, and it didn't like genuinely bother him, but it bothered him a little bit. And so it was hilarious. And I haven't been able to do that in years, obviously. So today, when you showed up to my place wearing your podcast quarter sleeve, Evan, or quarter zip, I was like, oh, man.
Quarter sleeve, let's go.
Yeah, just suns out, guns out for the boys for the summer episode. Yeah, so we should have sent Brad the memo. Although, Brad, you've been doing hard manual labor building a fence all weekend. I don't think you're wearing anything with sleeves or leg sleeves.
You are lucky I even muscled up the willpower to wear shorts today.
Well, lucky for me, actually, yeah, and the viewers can, those who watch on YouTube can see your legs too, so lucky for them as well. Would have been a lot of thigh for this episode.
Oh, it's still a lot of thigh. These things aren't that long.
2 for 2 on weird openings.
That's either a promotion for the YouTube channel or
demonetization.
Demonetization, never watch it ever.
And a very quick one, yeah. Folks, welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast. We are quicker than you'd think, approaching the NHL Draft, and so we are going to continue on with our profiles and interview today, and lots to talk about. So here to talk about all things Detroit Red Wings hockey, the world of the NHL, international hockey, and lots more. I am one of your hosts, Ryan Hanna.
I'm Brad Crisco.
And I'm Evan.
Like I mentioned, we are going to continue on prospect profiles today, starting with none other than Gabe Perreault, the highly productive forward out of the USNTDP. We have an interview that we recorded earlier last week with none other than Steve Dangle, where we get his very tired perspective on what's going on with the Toronto Maple Leafs, Kyle Dubas, all of that chaos. And when I say his tired perspective, not that his opinion is tired, but that man is very tired. Lots going on, obviously, in the Leafs world, and always good to have our friend Steve back on the show. We'll take a look at the NHL Stanley Cup Playoffs. Florida has punched their ticket to the Cup Finals, and Dallas has made a series of it with Vegas. We'll take a look at NHL and international news as the World Championships wrapped up. Seider and Kubalik put their stamp on that tournament. Some reported negotiations with the NHLPA and the NHL, what they could be looking at to secure a higher salary cap, and whatever else we get into before overtime. Before that, I want to let you know that this podcast is almost entirely supported by our Patreon supporters. They are the heart and soul of everything that we do. Patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast. If you want to support the show, you get access to our Patreon exclusive bonus episodes, which many say are better than the main episodes. We let loose, have fun. Brad's allowed to swear. Evan is allowed to talk about most whatever he wants. And so it's a good time to just hang out and take some more listener questions. In addition to that, you get access to our Winged Wheel Podcast Discord, which is a wonderful community, and you're also automatically entered into all of our giveaways. We gave away 2 tickets to every Red Wings home game this season, the vast majority of them going to Patreon supporters. So patreon.com/Winged Wheel Podcast if you want to support the show. Our support of the Jamie Daniels Foundation, if you want to, by all rights, sponsor the Winged Wheel Podcast nights at the LCA in partnership with the Detroit Red Wing events, and our expanded content universe, like the Expected by Whom podcast hosted by Prashant Iyer and Sean Shapiro. Okay, that's my spiel. Let's jump right into it. Gabe Perreault, late on the scene in terms of a player who might be a worthwhile pick at 9th overall. His performance, a record-breaking performance at the USNTDP, did enough to raise eyebrows where he is in a lot of people's top 10, and thus, if Detroit does indeed pick at 9th overall, Gabe Perreault is going to be one of the forwards that potentially could land with them. So who is Gabe Perreault? Is it worth taking a winger at 9th overall? And is his production the real deal?
So for some context on Gabe Perreault, because we've done our profile on Ryan LEonard, and we've done our profile on Will Smith. Will Smith has solidified himself as a surefire, no doubt, top 5 pick. Ryan LEonard's even getting in the conversation of the top 5 range himself. Most will say he's a surefire top 10 at worst. Gabe Perreault outscored them both. despite, like, obviously they played on the same line. Gabe Perreault was the one who tap danced past all the USN TDP world records before, obviously, Will Smith also crossed that threshold. The difference between Gabe Perreault and Will Smith and Ryan LEonard is he doesn't have that gritty physical edge to his game that Ryan LEonard has, and his shot's not quite there what Ryan LEonard's is. He doesn't have the pure skill that Will Smith has. So despite all the extra production, there are questions about will it translate up levels. Now, what he does have over those guys is he might be the smartest offensive mind in this draft, full stop. I know Michkov and I know Bedard are in this draft, and I'm not saying Perreault is definitely a smarter offensive player than those two, but he might. He's in that tier when you're talking about vision and what he can see and create and read in the offensive zone. If he had 4 inches more in height or an extra couple steps in his skating, he's a surefire top 5. Like, the talent is there. His hands are great. His shot's good. But I can't stress this enough. It's his brain. Just the way he processes the offensive zone is spectacular. The way he can feed a puck through seams and not with any lead-up time. That puck can be on and off his stick, and it's a seam tape-to-tape pass to someone on the back door before you even realize what's happening. He knew it was there before Buddy even looked at him for the pass. And that's a truly, truly special talent, but the NHL is bigger and faster than what he's playing, and that is the concern with everybody. Nobody denies the skill. Nobody denies the hockey IQ. But he's sub 6 feet, not very thick, and he's not slow, but he's not fast. So it's not like some smaller players who can skate their way out of problems. He can't do that. I tend to bet on high hockey IQ. We've seen it time and time again with guys like Bergeron and guys like Barkov who aren't super fast, but they're just so damn smart they can make it work. Obviously, Barkov being a lot bigger, but it's he's outside of Michkov, he's probably the most fascinating player in this draft because I see a reality where he goes 6 or 7 to Arizona or Philly.
Mm-hmm.
I see a reality where the Red Wings get him at 17. Like, it's all in the cards here, depending on what people like, and especially it being such a strong draft. It will give a lot of people pause because at all these picks, there is going to be a very enticing option other than Gabe Perreault for teams to consider. So players can fall. We saw it with Cam Fowler. All it takes is each team to like one player more. You can be second pick on 9 straight lists and you fall 9 spots. So I don't know. I'm a big fan of Gabe Perreault, but I do understand the concerns.
I'm going to state the obvious here, but Gabe Perreault seems like the kind of kid that the NHL or the teams that are looking to draft him aren't going to be sure about until they meet him and talk to his coaches and talk to, those who have been part of his strength and development kind of thing. Because like you said, Brad, his offensive acumen it's not a fluke. His brain, absolutely one of, if not the highest hockey IQ in his draft class. Like, what he can do, it overcomes any deficiencies you might have in terms of skating or size at the level he was at. But like you said, the NHL is a big boys league. You need to be strong, and more talented players than Perreault have been, beat down by the fact that they just get banged around too much and they can't stay in the league. If he was that slight frame and a much better skater, then I think it's a surefire he's going, top 6 or 7. But he's not, and so it does raise those questions. So for me, Gabe Perreault is the kind of guy where if I think of who are my 3 favorite picks for the Red Wings at 9th overall within reason, like not mocking Will Smith to them at 9th, Perreault is sometimes there at 3rd, but I don't really think about him too much as like the premier 9th pick until I go back and watch his tape, until I watch what he can do in the offensive zone. And for someone who can facilitate production or create production on their own like him at such an insane level, like that is a big swing of a pick if Detroit takes him. But I really like the idea of it, but it's I can't sit here and say the risk isn't there. we talked to Scott Wheeler recently on the podcast, and he believes that he's going to bulk up and put weight on his frame and build that strength. And if he does, and for me, he's got to be one of the players you're looking at most intently here, unless you're going center with like Oliver Moore or something.
Yeah, because we'll talk about draft philosophy a little more as we get closer to the draft, because there's going to be a lot of great wingers available at 17, like for sure. So there's going to be some debate. Do you take the D or the center at 9? Because maybe not a winger the caliber of Gabe Perreault, but still a really damn good winger at 17. But getting back to Gabe Perreault specifically, the thing with him and the style of game he plays, his strength also brings up a question. This guy, for example, like happened with Michael Rasmussen, never lived up to the full potential of a 9th overall pick, but due to his skill set, he's been able to fill in a bottom 6 role and do it very, very, very well. That is not on the table for Gabe Perreault. That is not in the cards. He does not possess the tools to do that. He is either on a scoring line or he is not an everyday NHL contributor. That's how it's going to shake down for him. But then the counterpoint to this, from a Red Wings specific standpoint, is who on the Red Wings resembles Gabe Perreault and can do what Gabe Perreault does in the offensive zone? The answer is nobody. Not a single person.
You know how much I hate comparables, but Corey Pronman had his player comparable listed as Lucas Raymond.
I love Lucas Raymond. Lucas Raymond doesn't have the vision that Gabe Perreault has. He just doesn't. I also don't think Gabe has the shot Lucas Raymond does. I like the comparable in the sense that Lucas Raymond is a good example of a smaller player who lacks speed that can still be effective in the NHL. Mm-hmm. But in terms of how they do that, I think they're pretty different. But yeah, I understand that comparable there. But if you're looking for that playmaker vision, hockey IQ, guy to quarterback the power play from the half wall, yeah, the Red Wings don't have that. They don't have anybody close to that. Lucas Raymond probably is the closest. So if you want to talk about organizational need beyond just straight positions, wing, center, defense, Gabe Perreault is the type of player they are lacking sorely.
Well, another thing he's got going for him is that his dad, Yannick Perreault, played in the NHL, so that's an invaluable source of information on how to make the next step. So there's a lot of guys in this top 10, top 20 who don't have that readily available to them in a very honest, upfront type of way. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see where Gabe Perreault lands, because he does have like such an interesting tool set, and like I have a strong feeling he'll be able to contribute at the NHL level. But with what you guys have said, if he doesn't add muscle in the next couple of years, it's going to be an uphill battle for him.
Gabe Perreault, Ryan LEonard, 50-50. Who do you take?
Oh, man.
It's hard. You just watched Matthew Tkachuk go to the Cup Finals.
So my answer, I'm torn between the two personally. So my tiebreaker is, what would Steve Yzerman do? Mm-hmm. And Ryan LEonard's the Steve Yzerman archetype. Yeah, I think LEonard's the pick. And, I mentioned how the Red Wings don't have that elite playmaker, that, guy who can quarterback a power play off the half wall. Yeah, they don't have an elite shooter either. So Ryan LEonard solves that problem as well. So, if they're both available at 9, the Red Wings are in a fantastic position.
If playing Ottawa this year told us anything, they need a guy like Ryan LEonard, someone who's not going to back down. Him and Marco Kasper together would be an absolutely pain in the ass to play against. Mm-hmm. I'm all for it. So if those are the two that you're making me pick, I'm going Ryan LEonard there.
Gabe Perreault, Oliver Moore. That one's tougher. Yeah,
that one's hard.
I like the player Gabe Perreault more. Oliver Moore is safer. Also, I guess my draft philosophy kind of is relevant now, because I think the Red Wings, unless a Ryan LEonard or just one of the elite wingers falls to 9, the Red Wings are probably better served grabbing a center at 9 and then grabbing another center or a winger at 17. Because at 17, you could be looking at a Matthew Wood, possibly Gabe Perreault, Braden Yager. The options at forward there are still going to be very good, but it'll probably be light on centers. Mm-hmm. Or even if they want to grab a defenseman there. But yeah, I probably lean Oliver Moore just because of the 2 first-round dynamic.
Perreault makes it interesting though. Like, it's not easy. And you watch what he's able to do, and I think back to the conversation you were having with Max before the event, Brad, and it was just about, what's a great indicator for production at the NHL level, and it's production during their development years. And this is a guy that's literally the most productive that the US NTDP has seen. Granted, like, it's not one for one as to when he did it and when Matthews did it at their point in their developments. Matthews had his year in Europe afterwards, but still, like, this is a guy who produces. And if teams pass him over, at picks anywhere from 7 to wherever he ends up getting picked, like, that's really his range. They're going to feel real stupid if he turns out to be an everyday, highly productive top 6 winger who is, a power play 1 guy making a difference in your offense. That goes without saying for everyone, but you worry about the guys who are passed over just because they're small. So, like I said, the combine is going to do a lot. Conversations with the kid is going to do a lot. Looking at how his brother has developed is going to do a lot. It sounds weird, like you're talking about horses, but the genetics are there. And you know what, Evan? What you said, people might not like it, but it's true. Having a family history of being in the NHL, it is a leg up. That kid has an advantage because he knows what it takes. He has his dad there. It's not a surprise that Brady and Matthew Tkachuk have exactly what it takes to be successful in the NHL. They get that from Keith.
They've been exposed to it their entire life. They've been in the NHL sort of stream ever since they were kids. So, yeah, it's an absolutely massive leg up for them.
And honestly, when is nepotism ever a bad thing?
Well, in the NHL, never. So,
yeah.
Interesting profile. And as we round it up, are like clumps of players who are relevant to Detroit at either pick that they have, provided they keep them. Perreault is going to be firmly in the mix for that 9th overall pick. So curious to see where he ends up. I wouldn't be surprised if he's gone by Detroit's pick anyways, but Gabe Perreault, credit to him. What a phenomenal season. And I have a feeling that he's going to make some team pretty happy, but we'll see. Okay, let's jump into our conversation that we had recently with Steve Dangle. We talked to Steve about what the hell has happened in Toronto. Steve's thoughts on the Atlantic Division, not just what Toronto's doing, but what Detroit's doing, Buffalo, the Senators, etc. We always joke and are somewhat serious that Steve's second favorite team is the Detroit Red Wings, so he always loves to offer his insights on what's happening in Hockeytown as well, and lots more. So without further ado, enjoy this conversation with Steve Dangle. Steve, every year we get you on the show to, catch up with an old friend and also ruthlessly make fun of the Toronto Maple Leafs. And every year we think, is this the last time we're able to do this? And I have to say, a part of my heart hurts for you, my friend, that this is probably the worst iteration of that yet. Steve Dangle, welcome back to the Winged Wheel podcast. It's a loaded question, but how are you, man?
They are only the Leafs could end a 19-year-old curse and come out of it worse. Like no one would have believed you. Well, I think everyone would have believed you. We're Leaf fans. We're predisposed to believe any doomsday scenario. But after beating Tampa, no one would have believed you that within a week would come just the worst possible feeling. Like, they lost the second round so badly, it erased all the goodwill that they generated from the win, and then they followed it up with a bizarre press conference, and less than a week later, they fired their general manager. So no one knows what to think anymore. Rumors are rampant. There's all these rumors about the next head coach. The current one hasn't even been fired yet. No one knows who the next GM is going to be. No one knows if they're going to have a GM for the draft. Matthews needs a contract, and if he's not getting one, he needs to be traded, and they have until July 1st to do that with impunity. Same with William Nylander, and Mitch Marner has a no move that kicks in on July 1st. So there's a lot of decisions, and I think I'm just talking a lot, and I'll let you answer some questions.
Well, as much as we love the age-old tale of how did Toronto blow it in the playoffs, the GM news is just too big. Like you mentioned, starting with that bizarre Dubas press conference, followed up by a bizarrely candid Shanahan press conference. What do you make of this? In your personal opinion, what do you make of what happened, and what's your take on the decision that Shanahan and MLSE made? Do you like it? Do you hate it? Where's Steve Dangle on this whole scenario?
I think it's all just an enormous, egotistical fight between the two. I think there's a lot of wrong to go around. Dubas' side of the story, he wanted to keep it private. Then Brendan Shanahan aired all their dirty laundry out there. And, it's Dubas' right to keep it all to himself. But I think a lot of people would have appreciated his side of the story. And now we're basically forced to take A, what Shanahan gave us, and B, what the insiders. And it's almost like we're getting Dubas' side of all this through the insiders. So Shanahan made it seem like, Dubas didn't want, he wasn't 100% sure Dubas wanted to be the GM of the Leafs, which was, the impression he got from the press conference. And I won't lie, it's a bit of the impression I got from the press conference. But then what we find out afterwards is Dubas, for all his major decisions, had to go to Shanahan, who would then go to the board of Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, who would then go back to Shanahan, who would then go to Dubas. And it was a very hindering, cumbersome way of doing business, and I can understand why Dubas wouldn't want to deal with that anymore. So it sounds like he tried to streamline it, which is basically, you could word it however you want, but it is, at least to a degree, cutting Shanahan out. And then what's the point of the president? So Shanahan turned around and said, what's the point of a GM? I'll do it myself. That's basically where we're at.
With Dubas leaving, and, Brad Treliving is a name that's most prominently talked about. Nothing is confirmed. So, GM to be named and all these decisions coming out ahead. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but with all of the decisions that need to be made for the Leafs in terms of resetting so they don't just hit their head against the same wall next playoffs, in terms of figuring out what to do with Matthews' contract, what's going to happen with Nylander and Marner, etc., this has to be the worst possible timing for all of this to come down, right?
All of it. So I think CJ's been the one saying, Chris Johnston has been the one saying, no one's coming out of this looking good. And, sides are being drawn. Was Shanahan right to fire Dubas? Yes or no? Here's all the reasons why or why not. And same with, Dubas, did he do anything wrong, et cetera, et cetera. I think we can all agree this is the worst possible time to fire your general manager. Like, it's not just ahead of the draft. There are such key components of this franchise that are to be decided. And all the Leafs win and lose from the core four. We've seen that. One of the core four is not going anywhere ever, and that's John Tavares, who's still a perfectly fine player, probably overpaid, almost definitely overpaid, but, no move clause, so it's a moot point. Nylander, Matthews, Marner, there's moving parts with all of them. And if, because you don't have a GM, you're not able to address those, questions, you hamstring whoever the next guy is. And I guess I'm wondering who the hell the Leafs think is going to sign up for that job when they have even less freedom to work than the last guy. Dubas, at very least, made the conscious decision to tie himself to the core four. He did not make the decision to shut the world down because of COVID, flattening the salary cap, and that screwed everything. But he made the decision to, even though the salary cap was going to stay flat, he made the decision to stick with those guys. The next guy, you might as well hire him after the draft. Because I mean, the odds of them establishing relationships and finding a trade out there, a good trade for a Matthews or a Nylander or a Marner, like, it just seems like such an unwinnable task. So the one way I think Shaney can get some respect back within the fan base is he created this mess. He's the one who's got to fix it now. So you want to be the GM so bad, tell you what, go ahead and do it, and we'll see who still wants this job when the dust settles.
Looking at this selfishly from an Atlantic Division rival perspective, the Red Wings aren't, just like all other 31 teams and salivating at the thought of what if Austin Matthews is available either on the trade or free agency market. It's also thinking, is this one of the top dogs in the Atlantic potentially resetting, coming down the standings for a little while, opening up a window for another team to take that spot? What do you make of this reset? What do you see the impact being? Do you see a solution for Matthews staying, or is there a growing sense internally within Leafs world that this could be a harder crash than anticipated?
I mean, we're all conditioned, like I said, to anticipate the worst because it's all we've known. So that's kind of what we're all bracing for. And the radio silence on basically anything to do with the roster is the most concerning part. The only thing we heard is that Shanahan has spoken to the core four, and they came away from the conversation with the impression they wouldn't be traded, which, again, that's just the definition of insanity. I cannot fathom the Leafs going back to the well with this group. So all we've heard is all we can go on. And, CJ, Chris Johnston came on our show. I think it was the day after or 2 days after Dubas' press conference. And he gave us a breakdown of everyone on the roster who he thought was staying or going. And he said, this is all contingent on whether or not Dubas stays. And then we find out a couple days later, he's not staying. So no one has any idea what's going on. It's really tumultuous. And like, this is going to sound hilarious, but because the Bruins are basically backed into taking a step backward, the Florida Panthers are one of the most mystifying forces in hockey right now. The Sabres are on their way up, but it's, a bit of a way up. The Red Wings are on their way up, but it's a bit of a way up. It just felt like this upcoming season, the division was really potentially for the taking. Like, Tampa could potentially be taking a big step back as well. And they're consciously throwing the team into complete and utter chaos.
Let's imagine Brendan Shanahan decides, you know what, I'm done with a traditional experienced GM. I'm hiring Steve Dangle. You can bring in Adam and Jesse as your assistant GMs if you'd like. What do you do leading up to July 1st? And I mean specifically with the core four as they are with their contracts. You can't magic Matthews into signing an 8-year extension if that's not what it seems like he's going to do. But what would you make of this situation if you could, pull the strings here?
Well, I think the easy one to do, and none of them are easy, is trade Mitch Marner. You have three guys who are essentially making 11 mil. He's making 10.9 or whatever. Nylander is the actual easiest to trade, but that's because he's good value. And the Leafs, because of their salary structure, desperately need good value. So I wouldn't be eager to trade him. But is he still going to be good value once he signs that contract extension, which he's eligible for on July 1st? So to me, it's the two wingers. I think you trade one of the guys on the right. You need a franchise center, and having a 1-2 punch of Matthews Tavares is still always hilarious. So it's got to be one of the wingers. And the conversation with Matthews, I think, is more serious than people realize, because he's supposedly not going to sign a max term contract, and this guy's hurt fairly often. I think he's still playing his best hockey, you know, even though he had the 60-goal season. Who knows if he'll ever repeat that. But, you know, he was up there among league leaders in hits, among forwards definitely. His defensive game has really done well, you know, shot blocking and everything. And all his chance metrics were great. It's just his finishing wasn't there, and that's in part because of injuries. This guy's already got, like, you know, a history of, he's had back injuries, shoulder, wrist surgeries. You know, at some point you got to decide, have we already gotten the best out of this guy that we can? And it's a scary, bleak thought.
You described this last month or two as the busiest month or two of your life when we got on the call here. So I appreciate you laying all this out in the middle of the Leafs melting down. And I know how crazy of a statement that sounds, considering that seems to be their permanent state. So I'll do you a little grace here and I'll pull you away from the Leafs for a second. We always love the annual, what does Steve Dangle think about his second favorite team, the Detroit Red Wings? From an outsider's view, what do you make of what the Red Wings did this season? Obviously the highs were high and the lows were low. You mentioned that the Wings are on their way up, but still have a way to go. What's your analysis on where Steve Yzerman's team is right now?
I was a little surprised by the Tyler Bertuzzi trade, to be honest, because I kind of, you know, I'm looking at the core that the Red Wings are building, and I sort of saw him as part of that, and I thought he was a big part of their identity as this, you know, underdog of a team, but still, like, he gave them a lot of scrappy FU to the way they were built. I think Buffalo is getting a lot more praise than Detroit because they had the really hot back half. They have some crazily performing players like Tage Thompson, and obviously everyone's really excited about Devin Levi. But I think that's sort of showing people aren't quite paying enough attention to the Red Wings, you know, crop of guys. Not that Sebastian Casa exactly has the same fanfare as a Devin Levi, but like this could be the 1-2 matchup in the Atlantic for a long time. And I think a few minutes ago I forgot to mention Montreal, who's also going to get a really good guy at this draft and has a bunch of good players already. And I think we're not far away from seeing the Atlantic Division basically just flipped, which is pretty good news for the Red Wings.
All right, Steve. Well, like I said, you're having a pretty busy month here, so we'll let this one wrap up. Folks, this has been Steve Dangle of the Steve Dangle Podcast, the Steve Dangle Podcast Network. He mentioned Chris Johnson, who has a show on that network. There's plenty of other fantastic shows. So, Steve, thank you for lending some of your time from SDPN, and appreciate you jumping on, man.
Thanks for having me. Call me the next time my team does something dumb.
Yeah, all right. See you in a few hours then. Welcome back. Big shout out to Steve for finding time. I'm sure you heard he was on the road to chat with us. Always good to connect. And yeah, he said, we'll chat with you the next time my team does something dumb. So I guess he's going to have a weekly segment on this show now.
Well, you saw the final four candidates that were rumored for the Leafs, yes? For their GM position?
I want nothing more in this world.
Pete's still in it, man.
Lord, I've seen what you've done for others. Please let the Toronto Maple Leafs hire Peter Chiarelli.
That's how I'll know we live in a simulation. If they hire Peter Chiarelli, we're in a simulation.
It was Chiarelli, Treliving, and two other bad candidates who I don't even remember who they are because Peter Chiarelli was still on the list, and that immediately assumes everybody else is also a schlub.
I think Hannibal Lecter was on there.
Yeah, and
Treliving would be an excellent hire.
He'd be okay. He's your typical hockey man, but he's not one of the worst of them. Wasn't Stan Bowman on the list at one point as well?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
He's going to be on everyone's. Outside of all the obvious context with Stan Bowman, he was doing a bad job in Chicago. Why do people want him?
Yeah.
Exactly. Like
the Joel Quenneville thing, I actually understand.
It's wrong and bad and gross, but yes, I understand. He is legitimately a good hockey coach. Stan Bowman's not even good at his job.
Yeah.
So you're going to go through that PR firestorm for what?
Better off to just hire Peter Chiarelli.
Hey, that's what we're saying.
Unironically.
Brendan, if you're listening, Brendan Shanahan, you're my favorite player of all time. I would never lead you astray. You should absolutely hire Peter Chiarelli. Not because it'll be hilarious, but because it'll be good.
I do wish death upon my enemies.
Anyways, we'll see where that one goes. As of right now, it looks like it's Treliving's to lose, but you never know what's going to happen in Toronto. Speaking of the league, let's talk about the Stanley Cup playoffs, and let's open with the big one here. The Florida Panthers, in 4 different one-goal games, sweep Carolina, who hasn't won a conference finals game in a billion years. But Florida finishes the sweep in what is the most tightly contested sweep I think I've seen in my life.
Right up there with the 97 Ducks-Red Wings series.
How insane was that entire process? How do you feel if you're the Carolina Hurricanes? We saw what Brind'Amour said, where he was like, this wasn't a sweep. Like, I know it was a sweep, but it wasn't a sweep. And I was like, oh, Rod.
Rod, man.
Just, you're memeing yourself. Don't do it.
That's why he's Rod the Bod and not Rod the Brain.
I can't say I'd be any better. Like, that, what a gutting way to lose that series.
Oh, he's doing better than I would. I'd just be staring blankly into the void for at least 3 weeks if it went down like that. I mean, Carolina's went to 3 conference finals since they won the Cup, and they're yet to win a game. That's insane.
That doesn't even make sense.
They're 0 for 12 since they won the Cup in the conference final. That is remarkable.
If Toronto didn't do such a fantastic job of continuing their own circus, Carolina would start to get some noise around like their own curse and their own offensive deficiencies. It's not the same size market, but still.
I mean, this whole Florida thing is bonkers to me because Sergei Bobrovsky is probably having the best playoff since 03 J.S. Giguère.
Yeah.
And he's not even a surefire Conn Smythe winner because of what Matthew Tkachuk's doing if they win it. Like, it's insane.
Who do you pick right now?
Oh, it's Bobrovsky. Like,
Okay.
Hands down, like, no question. But the fact that Tkachuk's at least making it interesting is insane.
3 game-winning goals in the series. That's nuts.
Like, what he had 1 overtime, 1 with 5 seconds. Oh, no, he had 2 overtime.
The 4 OT, the 1 OT, and then
With
the winner with like
5 seconds left.
Okay, you're going to be mad at me, Brad. Do you want to know what I think about the series winner?
If you say it was goalie interference, I'm going to kick you in the head.
It was goalie interference.
It was not goalie interference.
I think it was goalie interference.
It wasn't.
I understand why it didn't get called. Series winner. They already called back a potential game winner before.
I'm actually more mad about that one because that was a horrible goalie interference call. Because this is where the rules get jumbled.
Gather your thoughts. I can see you trying to say something.
I was about to quote Derek Lalonde and saying, well, then what the fuck is goalie interference?
When I figure it out, Ryan, I'll tell you because I'm assuming you're talking about, was it Lomberg? The spinorama went short side. Anderson was sliding the one way. And yeah. Because Anderson was already sliding the wrong way and was continuing to slide the wrong way when I think it was Colin White bumped into him and didn't change his trajectory. And the goal went in the side of the net where Anderson just came from. I'm like, yes, there is contact. And yes, it was in the crease. And as I understand the rule, as the rule is written, yes, that is goalie interference, but it actually had no bearing on whether the puck went in the net or not, which is, but either way, I digress. I could go on for another hour about these two if I needed to, and I don't think anybody wants to hear that.
The last goal, the series winner that Tkachuk scored, goalie interference, yes or no?
Nah, I don't think so.
I understand why it didn't get called. Like 100%, the margins were thin. I thought in terms of calling it by the rule, it was clear enough, but I was like, you called it a goal on the ice. This is the series winner. This would be a rough way. Like in front of the home crowd too. Like I understand why they didn't turn that one over.
Big shout outs to Sam Bennett and Sam Reinhart too. Like they're having incredible playoffs. I mean, Sam Bennett is just murdering people on the ice, so it depends how you feel about death. I embrace it fully. I'm prepared at any moment. It would make my life actually a lot easier. It'd solve a lot of problems. But man,
see, money can't buy happiness, everyone.
Oh God.
I don't even know what I was saying. I lost my train of thought.
Anyway,
he put Jacob Slavin in a body bag.
That was a massive hit. Man.
Yeah, that was one of the biggest hits I've seen in a long time.
Yeah. I'm happy Slavin's okay. Like he was scrambled after that one.
Oh yeah. He was up there with Starlink. They've just had a lot of timely players, and then Bobrovsky just going supernova. Like it's been incredible to watch, and it's turning into an amazing story and an amazing conduit to market the game.
You know what this playoffs is really driving home for me is players who were written off maybe or seen as less effective, or they got overpaid for in a trade at some point or overpaid in a contract, so people don't think about them. They're making big impacts. Brendan Montour
Wasn't he playing like fourth line winger at some point in Buffalo or something?
Hey, once upon a time, Sabres fans have all said Montour, Reinhart, and Eichel were going to lead a cup run.
And here they are.
Here they are.
They were wrong.
They were right, and the monkey paw curled.
He's playing 27 and a half minutes a night right now. I mean, a lot of that is driven by that 4OT game, but he's out there.
He buzzes around.
Yeah.
He is a little water bug out there.
Absolutely.
Montour is the perfect example of something I always got so angry about in the Blashill Holland era, where there'd always be these conversations about, yeah, this guy's really skilled, but, you know, he doesn't play defensively sound, or he's not a refined player. And so the Red Wings would consistently either not like these guys, bench these guys, send these guys down, or not just draft or trade for these players. That was Montour.
Well, why do we have these guys when we can just put out Alexei Marchenko, who is good defensively?
Yeah. With proper coaching, you can turn guys with Brendan Montour's talent into what Brendan Montour is now.
Yeah.
Like, we talk about culture and, you know, development and coaching. Ta-da! Florida's figured it out. Sam Bennett, write-off player in Calgary, key contributor to a Stanley Cup final team now. It can be done. So this is going to be my example for the next 10 years of the next time someone argues we shouldn't acquire a player because he's super skilled, but he's not good defensively. Shut up. You can teach people to play defense.
If you can teach Alexander Ovechkin to play defense, you can teach anybody.
Yeah. Yes.
The Matthew Tkachuk contract, if he was up this season instead of last season, like if this was to be the year he had to negotiate a new contract,
please remind me what his deal currently is.
He's $9.5 million was his extension.
It's already worth it.
It was worth
7 years left.
It was worth it at the time, but if he was signing this season, how much would that contract be?
12 at least.
Like,
at least.
He would be up there with the biggest earners in the NHL.
Yep.
I think it was Jay Fresh put out a poll about like a redraft and who goes first, and I think it's still very obviously Austin Matthews from that draft class.
I saw this conversation, and
it is very obviously Austin Matthews, right?
It is so insanely stupid. Don't get me wrong. Love Matthew Tkachuk. They've both been in the league for, I think, 7 years. Austin Matthews has been the far better player 6 of those 7 years. And Austin Matthews' overall playoff numbers are better.
But if you think about this, the leverage that Matthew Tkachuk has right now.
Oh,
if he were to have his contract this year,
Matthew Tkachuk has had the better season than Austin Matthews. Matthew Tkachuk has been better than Austin Matthews this year. Full stop. End of statement. But sample size matters.
But all I'm saying is that in a hypothetical world where this was the year, instead of this being the first year of his contract, if this was the year that he was negotiating his next contract as Biggie, he would be negotiating for numbers like Matthews and McKinnon.
100%.
Well,
100%.
He's doing all right now.
Yeah, his $9.5 million in a tax-free state is pretty okay.
Man, we're getting a tax-free cup final.
Oh, do we want to talk about that?
No.
You're
No.
both gonna hate me. Actually, because you both like me a lot as a person. I know you're gonna start to hate me now.
Well, this is interesting because Brad likes the salary cap and I don't, and you think we're both going to hate you.
Yes.
So that I'm now curious what this take might be.
I am coming around to being a believer in the NHL has to adjust for salary cap based on the income tax of where the team plays.
I'm not against that at all.
I'm for that, but I just think the logistics of it wouldn't be possible.
Oh, whatever the NHL is going to have to pay their accountants $1 trillion for sure. And I don't think you can make it like a perfect, like it can't be too dramatic, but
there's an accountant listening right now who's just like, this doesn't work.
Like, 'cause imagine having to.
And we're like, but what if?
No, it doesn't
you just
work.
Don't do that.
It's like when you work at a startup and you call legal and they're like, no, don't do that.
Yeah.
No, don't do that.
Like you would then have to keep up with the laws and all the taxes and all the tax code for like 30 different states and provinces. There's no way.
Make a spreadsheet.
I'm big. Yeah.
Just put it in Excel. With a couple pivot tables, you're good.
Do your little numbers.
I'm pro salary cap, and I do think that this needs to be balanced in some way, but I don't think there's a realistic way to do it. I'm a bigger proponent of making teams earn their salary cap breaks. Like, my big change would be every team is allowed one player who doesn't count against the cap per year, but he had to be drafted by your team and developed by your team. So if you trade him and bring him back, he doesn't count anymore. So like the Oilers could have Connor McDavid not count against their cap. You know, the Leafs, Austin Matthews, Colorado, Nathan McKinnon. So if you can properly draft and develop Boston, David Pastrnak, 24th overall pick or something like that, they should be rewarded for that, and then that can kind of balance out the salary cap because your quote-unquote break was made by yourself. Now, obviously, you get a first overall pick. Well, congratulations. But, you know, imagine right now the Red Wings don't have to worry about Larkin. But then it creates a lot of fun hypotheticals. Do you make Larkin the exception, or do you
pass it on to someone
pass it
else?
on, hoping that maybe, you know, let's say a Michkov falls this year, Mo Seider might cost more, whatever, right? Like, it could create a pretty interesting dynamic.
I do really like that idea, too. I don't think it's addressing the same thing as what I'm thinking about, but I do
No.
really like the idea overall.
Sorry, accountants who are listening. One option could be, you know, the salary caps are all adjusted based on the state income tax. So a team that has a higher provincial or state income tax, their salary cap is higher.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I'm
And
advocating
Florida's
for.
would be less.
Oh, you would say relatively less,
relative to what their state province income tax would be.
Like, I don't know the exact math, but hypothetically, the Leafs in a very high tax province, their salary cap would be like 87 million, and Florida's would be like 82. I don't know what the actual numbers
to
are.
that effect. Now, it would the rollout of that would be insane. Like, and you also have to remember they only play half of their games at home, and that affects it. And then you get into, well, how is salary paid out? Because some people's salary.
Yeah,
like,
because if you
is performance bonus,
which
or
is
paid out in bonus.
well, the one thing I think a lot of people don't understand, and if I was reading an article on this, and if I read this correctly, say Austin Matthews, who plays for the Leafs, the game he's playing in Florida, a road game in Florida, he's for that game making Florida state tax
what I mean.
rate. Yeah, so it's not as big a problem. But
there's jock taxes and
Yeah.
it's a whole thing.
There's also part of me that believes there's always going to be inequities between teams, and you just have to overcome it. Like,
oh, perfect. We can get rid of the salary cap.
you know, Detroit's in Michigan and not California, so that's one hurdle they have to overcome, right? Like, it's not New York City.
Global warming will help.
We're getting there slowly, but by the time we get there, I
Detroit will
hope,
be the new California.
I hope we have Stanley Cup before
We're off
that.
the absolute rails right now.
Oh my god, what's the 2085 draft looking like? I'm leaving this all in, by the way.
Oh,
yeah, that's
God.
fine.
Anyhow,
What about by the 2039? Like, if Hank gets drafted by Detroit,
and by this, Brad means his son Hank.
Yeah, 2038. Sorry,
Of course, you know your kid's draft here.
Oh,
I got it wrong the first time. I had to correct myself. But
And Hank will make it. Hank will be there will be no Matthew Tkachuk 2.0 until Hank makes the league. I'm saying that with full confidence.
yeah, and I want him to go to Detroit, but I also would like him to go somewhere where when I go watch his games, I can wear shorts and flip-flops. Like, so.
Tampa Bay Lightning, come on down.
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to try to bring us back on the rails. The other
luck.
series, Vegas-Dallas. Vegas had Dallas in a chokehold, 3-0. They were in overtime in Game 4, and Dallas got it done. I think it was Pavelski scored the winner, and then in Game 5, Dallas 4-2. So a couple takeaways. One, if you're Vegas, how nervous are you? And two, Jamie Benn, was he the downfall of the Dallas Stars the entire time?
Jamie Benn is a phenomenal leader. He identified the problem with this team and removed it from the equation, and they have won 2 games since.
Yep.
Like, just the quintessential leader.
This is the first time in his life Jamie Benn's gone down successfully.
I was waiting for that.
I honestly wasn't going to. And then I was like, I'm not better than this.
No.
No, we're late enough in the episode. It's fine.
Are you nervous if you're Vegas?
Of course. Of course. Vegas, for as brief of a franchise they've had, they have had some pretty wild playoff failures. So they are braced for the unexpected because it's happened to them already.
Yeah, I would be too. They've got such a great group of players and a lot of guys who've kind of been there. There's some veterans in the league. So I don't know if they're too worried, but if they can't grab the steering wheel in the next game and they head into Game 7, all bets are off for me. I don't know where this one's going.
Well, Vegas's most valuable player is back in Game 6.
Jamie Benn.
This is all great for Florida. A lot is made of Bobrovsky being the kind of guy who needs a lot of rest. He's a very slight fellow. And so for him to get all of this extended rest is just huge for Florida. I'm also a big believer in momentum being killed in playoffs. I've seen teams with a lot of rest come out really rusty in games 1 and 2. Very similar feeling. I think 1-to-1 analog is today, Evan, when we were out on the course and we were just backed up on every hole. And that's why my game started falling apart at like 15.
Yeah, that was it.
So I know the feeling very specific.
Your game started falling apart on 15?
Well,
was it a shotgun start?
You know what? It was the last 2 holes of the front 9 and last 2. Hey, this is overtime talk. We'll see where the playoffs go and who Florida faces. But right now, if Vegas comes in, they're probably going to have really good betting odds. Not even a joke. But Florida has been the underdog every time, and they've looked convincingly like the deserving winners by the end of the series, seeing the obvious. But I don't know how you bet against Florida and Bobrovsky at this point.
So Down Goes Brown actually had a great article on this, and it's going to be fascinating to play out, where he kind of did a history of all the Cinderella runs.
Mm-hmm.
The Montreal Canadiens from a couple years ago, the Ducks of 2003, the Panthers of 96, the Canucks of 94, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the one overarching theme is they all ran out of steam in the final. Like every one of them, without fail, lost in the Cup final.
So 03 Ducks with Jaguar winning Conn Smythe and not the Cup is just so tough.
Yeah, that was an all-timer. But there's always exceptions to the rule, because the LA Kings won the Cup as an 8th seed. The LA Kings weren't like a real 8th seed, right? They had a slow start to the season, made a couple trades at the deadline, and they were the hottest team in the NHL for the last 3 months going into that playoff. So they went in on an absolute prolonged heater and just kept it going. Florida didn't have that regular season heater that LA did, but they did win the President's Trophy last year and then got Matthew Tkachuk. Obviously, they lost a couple key players to do that. But it's not like this team came out of nowhere. This is in no ways comparable to the Montreal Canadiens of a couple years ago. So I think they could do it. They don't strike me as, the Cinderella team. They do strike me as an underdog. I mean, you are the 8th seed after all, and they had a very mediocre regular season. They were one Pittsburgh-Chicago game away from not making the playoffs, which is crazy to think about. So
that game was... We'll talk about that at a different time, but the impacts of that was so funny.
Yeah, that game literally set Pittsburgh into a new trajectory, the Panthers to the Cup final, and the Blackhawks into Connor Bedard. Just all of that over that one game. But, yeah, so I don't know. And if Vegas can wrap it up in the next game, and get a little bit of rest before the Cup final, I don't love that for Florida. Because, this time of year, any hockey player will tell you, once you get deep into the playoffs, man, you get a week or 2 off after 3 hard rounds, you are so thankful. It's not that hard to ramp back up, especially when you're rested, you're healthy. Everybody on that team is nursing something right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, sprained ankles, tweaked wrists, they're all healing right now. So if Dallas and Vegas go a hard 7 games, and then there's a reasonably quick turnaround for them to the Cup finals, that's a huge advantage to the Panthers. Momentum be damned. I'd rather go in rested and healthy even if that means I drop game 1, then go in just bagged out of my mind trying to remember what way is, forward.
And I guess an extra game against Jamie Benn, you are running the risk of
death.
Yeah, essentially. Okay, that's the playoffs. Who knows by next episode what we'll know in terms of what the finals will be. Game 6 is Monday night, and Game 7 is Wednesday night. So we might be recording while right before Game 7, depending on what the Stars can do. Okay, some quick news. This is mostly international news. The World Championships have wrapped up. Mo Seider was playing for gold. Unfortunately, Canada spoiled the party. They ended up winning 5-2 in the gold medal game. But it was Mo Seider who did get 2 assists there, and alongside Dominik Kubalik was named to the tournament all-star team.
Hell yeah. Big breakout tournament for the notably underappreciated Mo Seider.
It's not a surprise. I think it's mostly just for people who maybe thought Mo Seider didn't have a good season because they only saw his start to the year, as a reminder to them of, no, this guy's a star in Detroit and very obviously Germany's MVP. Who was it that he lit up along the boards? Was that Middleton? He just stood him up like running into
I was literally watching and I don't remember who it was.
They don't remember who they are now either.
I can't remember who half of the Canadian players were, if I'm being honest, because this was their G squad.
Yes, as the World Championships tend to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Who or what is a Michael Carcone?
The bronze medal game, unfortunately, the States lost in overtime. But if you like cool hockey stories and if you want to see the value of tournaments like these where, it's not the best players in the world going because a lot of them are still in the Stanley Cup playoffs or they couldn't go.
Or they're on a beach in the Caribbean right now.
Latvia's overtime winner over the States. Man. Oh, man.
I don't care what happens the rest of the year. That is a top 5 hockey moment of 2023.
Yeah.
At worst.
Yeah.
Like, that country has never won a medal in, the top flight any international competition. Nothing. 0. No Olympic gold, silver, bronze. No World Championship gold, silver, bronze. No Canada Cup gold, silver, bronze. Nothing. And they are a hockey crazy country. It would be like if Canada had never medaled. Ever. Yeah. There was the Latvian celebration for their bronze medal was 10 times that of the Canadian gold medal celebration.
Oh, God. Seeing how much it means to them, that is a way bigger story than Canada winning gold.
Oh, 100%.
Honestly, just with the nature of this tournament, I would have loved to have seen a Germany gold, Latvia bronze.
I kind of was rooting for it. Mo Seider at least gave me some rooting interest.
Yeah.
Also, Adam Fantilli, the only player ever to win World Junior and World Championships in the same year other than Jonathan Toews.
Huh. Shame. Because Detroit's not getting him.
Yeah.
Speaking of Red Wings, Henrik Zetterberg inducted into the IIHF Hall of Fame officially. It just makes me miss him, honestly, but to see him get the international recognition that he deserves, of course. He's part of the Triple Gold Club. Don't forget that. So cool for Hank. Congrats to Henrik Zetterberg. One quick note I want to make before we jump into overtime here. It was reported, I believe, by Larry Brooks first that the NHLPA is, quote, reportedly willing to talk about an expanded 84-game schedule if the league agrees to higher than expected salary cap next season. So things that they are not willing to put on the board, increased escrow. Things they are willing to put on the board is playing 2 more regular season games. This conversation has always been coupled with they're just going to take that off of the exhibition portion of the season because the preseason runs too long. I am fully in favor of that. I think the preseason is 5 games too long. It's a lot. I think there's a lot of value in starting the season cold because it creates more chaos and mistakes and it just opens things up a little bit more. And I'm sure players like it too when they aren't playing exhibition games so much. So 2 extra regular season games in exchange for not waiting so long to increase the salary cap. Nothing's been confirmed. We don't know if that's where they'll land, but overall, thoughts on keeping the season the same length, but adding 2 more games in that schedule time?
I don't care. I hate the preseason. Preseason's nice because it's kind of like that. Hey, hockey's back. I'm watching hockey again. This is fantastic. And then you get halfway through your first preseason game and you're like, right, I haven't heard of half these guys and this is awful.
Yeah.
No hockey's awful, but it's awful. So, yeah, I'm in favor of it. You know, the players are just going to look at it. Oh, yeah, a couple less preseason games and maybe 1 or 2 less practices during the season, and we get a bit more money out of it. Sure, great. Sign me up.
Yeah, it is. You do think about it, and you're like, by the time these guys get to the postseason, they're banged up. These teams are a shell of themselves. I'm not surprised because for financial reasons, obviously there's a vested interest in, playing more so you make more money. It's all financial, but in terms of the sport, I don't think adding more games is technically what's best, but the changes the NHL and the NHLPA are going to be seeking to make aren't in necessarily the best interest of the sport purely. It's all about their finances. And I mean, again, I say this a lot. I don't cry for millionaires or billionaires, but in their perspective, especially the players, they've hurt a lot in terms of finances through COVID and escrow and things like that. So they're going to be just taking every decision, be it helmet ads, jersey ads, moving board ads, adding 2 games, whatever, to recuperate what they view as financial loss or opportunity cost lost.
I am very much in favor of less games because I think the season is already too long. Like, playing NHL hockey into June is outrageous to me. And adding 2 games, you're never going to be able to take that back.
No.
So they need to be very...
They've had an 84-game season before. They have scaled back. Early to mid-90s, it was 84.
Yeah,
well, this is different
time.
money now.
Yeah.
They'll never go back. It'll only go up, I think. So to fix your short-term problems with a long-term solution, I would be incredibly careful in how you structure this, if this is indeed how they want to go about doing it.
Well, if you look at it from a player standpoint, the NHL, unlike most of the other major sports, it's a very gate-driven league. Like, most of their revenue comes from ticket sales, not like the NFL where they obviously get a ton of ticket sales, but they play once a week, so most of their money has to come elsewhere. So that's an extra 32 games a year, I believe. Yeah, because there'd be a home and a road team. So that's not an insignificant amount of money to the NHL, and it does create a more balanced schedule. Also, this is at a 32-team league right now. I don't think any of us sitting here think this is going to be a 32-team league in 5 to 10 years. I fully expect it to be a 34 to 36-team league by that point, which,
I think they'll settle on 36.
That is
for like a year,
and
then they'll talk about more.
Yeah.
I think about this a lot, and I also agree. It feels insane.
I don't care about the number of teams personally. I actually am they could go all the way up to 40 for all I care.
Oh, God, please kill me.
Well, it's just more markets. It's just more eyeballs. The talent in the sport now is way more spread out. It's not like it used to be where guys who could barely skate were playing on the 4th line. You pull up a second liner from the AHL and slap him in the NHL. They do not look out of place. They're obviously not stars or superstars, but they do not look out of place. So you can easily spread it out. And as time goes on, that's only going to get more and more relevant. So
I think hockey has a talent issue because it is so incredibly financially, like, it's a huge financial
barrier.
I don't want to say barrier to get into the sport. There aren't enough. There's a lot of people who are playing hockey, especially in Southern Ontario. But if you look at North America as a whole, I don't think there's enough people playing hockey to create a development pipeline that's strong enough to give you the best product for a 32 plus N number of teams.
I completely agree, but what the owners think is we sell hot dogs for $13.
I'm not arguing that they see that. I'm just saying the on-ice product will not be as good because it's far more difficult for parents and families to put their kids in hockey than it is NFL, basketball, soccer, ultimate frisbee.
I will agree with you and disagree with you at the same time because I don't think the 1 point directly affects the other, because you're right. The barriers to get into hockey right now are insane, and the cost is a huge problem. You are right. I don't think that affects the 36 to 40 team thing. I actually think expanding the NHL is going to create more talent, because for the Austin Matthews example in Arizona, you put a team in Salt Lake City, now there's more interest in hockey there. You put a team in Houston, now there's more interest in hockey there. You put a team in Kansas City, now there's more interest in hockey there. Expanding the NHL expands hockey. Now, yes, at the grassroots level, huge problem. Hockey is the worst the worst sport for minor sports by far, and it's not close. But from a getting people interested in hockey and thus playing hockey, expansion only helps.
This seems like a great off-season topic, so I'm going to put a pin in this to bring up my work speak, and we'll circle back in the off-season.
We know what that means in work speak, you piece of shit.
Why don't we take this offline? We'll regroup on it later.
And no, but genuinely, we'll talk about this in the off-season. But for now, we're nearing the end of the show, so why don't we go into our overtime segment? Overtime is a segment where we take questions, comments, and rude remarks from our listeners and read them on air. On this episode, Overtime is brought to you by our Patreon supporters. Again, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast. If you want to join the so-called Dub Club, the overtime episodes, the bonus episodes, I should say, the Discord and the giveaways are some of the benefits that you get, and you help support legitimately everything that we do on this show. Questions here, one from Orange Sunquist and one from Dan, and both of them are saying, what about Matt Murray as a backup goalie option? Wings get a backup goalie and an asset for taking the cap hit off Toronto's hands. Good idea or too risky? And Dan adds, if you do take Murray on, which of the top four are you trying to get involved? What are you willing to pay? Nylander and Murray for a first and a second and a bottom six winger, for example. So overall thoughts on getting Matt Murray as an asset?
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack there that I agree with and disagree with. Matt Murray, yes, he does seem like a prime candidate to acquire an asset, and it is at a position that is currently vacant for the Red Wings. And Matt Murray, when healthy, is an adequate NHL goalie. You're going to assume that you're going to get him for at half a season at best. So you better have a good third stringer for when Matt Murray's out. And what asset are you getting from Toronto? Because you're not doing it for like a fifth. So, that also matters. But if you can get a top 3 round pick, I say absolutely do it. Even if you have no intention on playing Matt Murray, you just bury him in the minors. It's probably still worthwhile doing. I'm going to repeat this till I'm blue in the face. The Red Wings should not be interested in anybody with less than 2 years left on their contract because they are not going to win a Stanley Cup in the next 2 years. Thus, they shouldn't be paying premium assets for short-term fixes. So as much as I would love Austin Matthews or William Nylander on this team, they each only have 1 year left till unrestricted free agency. In no reality should the Red Wings be doing that unless there's an extension in place first, which is a long shot. So would love the players, but too short of term. But yes, I agree with you on the Matt Murray point.
Context for Matt Murray, he has a 10-team no-trade clause and is on the last year of a contract that pays him $6.25 million a year in cap hit. Total salary this season is $8 million. So depending on who's trading for him, if their owners have tight purse strings, that
would have to be a premium pick or prospect.
Imagine paying Matt Murray $8 million this season.
The Leafs also are the team that gave up a first-round pick to unload Patrick Marleau for 1 season. Yeah. So this could be a pretty significant pick if Detroit chooses to do it.
You know what? I have a lot of thoughts and feelings about how the Dubas, Shanahan, Toronto situation played out. But one thing stays true to me is I'm sure Dubas has gotten a lot better as a GM, but he made a lot of moves that hurt the team. Some of them, I think most GMs, if not all GMs in the league, probably would have done the same one, and we're just looking at it in 2020. But with the way Marner and Matthews' contracts are expiring, that team is in a bad place right now because of those contracts.
Yep. And not because of the cap hit, because of the term.
Yes, the term and the conditions. Dylan Larkins Nana says, who will play more games in the winged wheel this season, Soderblom or Mazur? I'll go Soderblom on that one just because of the extra year that he's had. But I maintain that Carter Mazur is going to make a lot of noise at camp and is like my dark horse to be this year's Elmer Soderblom and maybe even stick longer.
I'm going to say Soderblom, but I'm actually surprised how hard I have to think about this. Mazur is... but I'll put it this way. I think Soderblom's going to be up for most of the season, but if Mazur makes opening night roster, he's playing 82 games.
Mazur just got a lot of familiarity with Derek Lalonde at the World Championships, so...
Right? I didn't even think about that.
So
and he was playing like second power play and stuff, wasn't he?
Goal and 3 assists, had himself he wasn't nobody in that tournament. It's a good question though. Babe Landeskog says, what archetype of player do you guys slot into when you've played hockey? Sniper, stay-at-home defenseman, etc. Oh, God. What is a small, speedy defenseman who thinks the game well, who legitimately cannot shoot the puck from the blue line? There's no archetype for that.
Oh, congrats, you're Quinn Hughes.
That archetype is not in the NHL.
God. Like, if I'm playing in a league that actually matters, where I'm actually back-checking and we're not talking about beer league.
Yeah. You come off the blue line.
Yeah, I'm shoot first 200-foot center who with good offensive instincts. I even when I'm above my head, which is often, I always have found ways in my life to put up good numbers. Like just in that Gabe Perreault vibe, you look at him and you go, "Oh, he's not that good." Because my skating sucks.
You're stockier than Gabe Perreault, but a little shorter.
Yeah, my skating, like I'm quick, but I don't have a good stride. I have a very awkward stride.
You're built like a white picket fence.
Yeah. Yeah, honestly.
Sorry.
Like the one you're building in your backyard.
No, my skating is like a protest. It makes a lot of noise but doesn't accomplish much. So
I'm getting all political here. Jeez.
Yeah.
Slowly.
But no, I don't know. I'm that guy who doesn't look like a good hockey player but can actually hang.
What?
How would you describe yourself, or if you want to rebut against either of us?
Right now when I'm out of shape, or when I like actually played hockey?
You're in shape for sure.
Your new Hamburg days.
Shifty, good puck moving defenseman who's not afraid to get involved in the extracurriculars.
You were shifty.
Oh yeah.
Why didn't you make the show? You're big and shifty.
If I was only a little bit taller, I would have played in the NHL. Yeah, that's all it was.
How tall are you? 6'1"? 6 feet?
6 feet. Yeah.
That's
I don't know what I
That's
weighed.
nothing for a defenseman.
I
these
think
days.
I probably weighed $170 when I was like 17.
I was like $135, man. You were practically a monster.
I was 120 at best.
Yeah, I was playing against like 21-year-olds who are mutants, like 240.
Yeah, he's talking like junior C mutants too.
Junior C is
you can't accurately describe
Hands as big as cinder blocks.
Junior C is where you go to feel like what it's like to play helmets and gloves with someone who really doesn't like you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Simon says 27 says, would it be possible for the Wings to trade both first-round picks next year to move up in the draft while keeping their 2 picks this year? If so, how far up could that get the Wings? So what would Detroit's first-round pick and hypothetically Boston's get them in this year's draft? I don't think it would get you as high as you think it would.
Which means you shouldn't do it, because I'm not doing that unless I'm getting into the top 5. Like, I'm not even considering that for...
You don't do that for pick 8?
From 17?
No. Both of next year's picks, neither of this year's first round picks.
Oh, so we're not
to buy into this year's draft. So 3 picks in the first round, hypothetically.
I've got you. 8, probably not. I don't think I would do that. I
don't know. 8, 9, 17 from this draft? That's tough. Because what could 8 and 9 get you? Now we're getting into cap friendly.
Yeah. If I'm moving to potential top 20 first round picks, I want Carlson, Smith, Michkov. Like I'm not doing that for a second line center or winger. You know what I mean?
Give Wallman the Heart says, not sure how you guys would answer this outside of a vibes read, but what do you think the Wings want to do with Zadina at this point? So I can give you some like actual information on this.
Pray.
Vibes are low.
The vibes are what the vibes are. With Zadina, this team has, and genuinely, like this is real, this is what's happened. They've explored everything. His start to the season was terrible. Anyone could have seen that. They were really disappointed, especially because of how his preseason went. They just didn't have faith that they could put him in the lineup, like at all. He got hurt. He came back, and the way he came back after a setback in the injury, but the way he worked to rehab and get back on the ice and the way he played when he came back, it wasn't just us saying like, oh, these few games he's been really great. The team thought the same thing. They really loved the way he grinded. They really loved the way he worked hard. He changed. He was working on small parts of his game that, they've been wanting him to for a long time, and they were feeling a lot more confident in him. That said, Zadina is on a very friendly contract to trade, and a lot of teams have and will continue to look at him as, is this a possible reclamation project? So, I mean, injury has set back a lot of that vision, but if he starts next season as it has pretty much his entire career, I would not be surprised to see Zadina moved, is what I'll ultimately land on. Things that would factor into that is Mazur ready? Is Soderblom pushing? Is Casper an everyday player in this lineup? There are going to be fewer and fewer spots for Zadina, so he's going to have to earn his way in. He started, but it's not automatic, so I could see him honestly be moved.
Yeah, and it's also important to remember, at this point, when we're talking relevancy to next season, this is still not a team that is deep at forward. There's a lot of bodies, but not many substantial impact type players. And the fact that Zadina still has a low chance, but a chance to become something bigger than he is more appealing than some of the fourth line guys or camp bodies.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, if camp comes around and Soderblom and Mazur aren't, smashing the door down to take his spot, he's still very valuable in that spot because he's cheap and there's room to grow.
All right, folks, we're going to wrap up this episode of the Winged Wheel podcast. We'd like to thank all of our listeners, new and old. If you want to support the show and Patreon's not for you, well, you can do so by subscribing and leaving a rating wherever you listen to your podcast. It actually does make a big difference for us. To all of our patrons, thank you so very much. To our name-level supporters on Patreon. Arjun Shankar, Yves Bartels on behalf of the Sarah Grand Foundation, Aikfer, Wait For It, We Are Geelong, the greatest team of all, Glenn Brabham, The Hat 123, Colton Dietrich, who is a brand new name-level sponsor. Colton, welcome to the Dub Dub Club. Keenan O'Donohue, Yanni Burgers, Meals on Wheels, Matthew M. Rice, Croner's Left Knee, Admiral Matt S. of the Cheesebag Navy, Babe Landeskog, Bros Before Hostas, Carl Brutanen and Aluski, Chimmy, Chris P., Citizen High Five, Connor Scovey, Cooking with Kosa, Coyote season tickets in anywhere but Tempe, Dad, please come home, it's been 5 years, Denny's Gamer Girl, Derek Enstam, DJ Denton, Give Blood, Fight Probert, Hockeytown Matt, Hassam Al-Qassem, Jay Gollum, Jacob Turner, Joel Miranda, Kalen Wood, Kevin James, King Tone, Marcus, Matt McKay, Michael Edlund, R.A., Red 3, Ryan Hanna, but spelt like Ryan Johnson, the director. Thank you for that. Ryan Hubbard, Scott Martin, that's what I appreciate about you. Wallman's Elite Dancing D, General Andy Bohan of the Cheesebag Army, Sam Bankson, #1 Red Guys fan, A.A. Ron, Adam Gowitzka, Adam Rose, Brad Simmons, Brian Vasha, Button a Lemon, now available throughout Southeast Asia, except Singapore, pending lawsuit for the inferior bum in a lemon. Thank you, Reed, for that one. Captain Antonio Gracias of the United Federation of Cheesebags, CJ Wilkinson, Commander Ben Barron, the Cheesebag Space Force, Connor Leighton, Corey Prida, Darren Fick, Dungeon Master Puppets, Evans Lost Rangefinder, Frank Stanley, Gene Sullivan, Grand Rapids Hockey Guy, Griffey Boy, Instructions Unclear, Cheesebag No Longer Fresh, James Laporte, Jeremiah Dobo, JM Rhapsody, John Evans, John Ingalls, Josh Yelton, Kevin McCracken, Quaz, Linda Hull, Maximilian, Melissa Erickson, Ophelia. Ryan, do you ever get tired of reading these names? No. Steven, Tatar Sauce, the Hodag, and the St. Louis Blueth. Thank you all so very much. I never get tired of reading names. You are all the reason I'm even out here reading these names. And on that, we will talk to you midweek.
Thanks for tuning in to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Be sure to check out wingedwheelpodcast.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll also find links to other ways to support the show, such as Patreon, official podcast apparel, and more. And don't forget to follow the show on Twitter at Winged Wheel Pod. And of course, the hosts at Brad Crisco, at Ryan Hanna WWP, and at Hockeytown Evan.